So kicking things off for this 50th episode and pushing Mario's 35th anniversary, all love of Mario that we're going to talk about throughout this rest of the entirety of this podcast, we've been interviewing throughout the past few weeks a few people from the forums. And the three of us, Nick has interviewed, Greg has interviewed, and I've interviewed as well. And I won't call them interviews really, they're more chats about a Mario game or two that a forum member holds in high regard. And as these kind of short interviews have been pre-recorded, we'll be slotting in one of these short Mario chats in strategic places throughout this main topic. And here's the very first. So I'm now here with Sam Gittins from the N-E forums. How are you doing, Sam?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good.
And we're going to talk about a more esoteric Mario title, not like the three titles that were released in the Super Mario 3D All-Stars, those big kind of titles. But one of the NES games that was one of my favourites back then was Super Mario Bros. 2. I probably enjoyed it more than the original Super Mario Bros. Just because of it's a kind of a slower pace, the way you pick up turnips and you can jump on enemies and all that without taking damage. That came out in October 1988, but that's not quite the game you want to talk about, though, is it?
No, the game I want to talk about is Super Mario Advance, because that was famously a launch title for the Game Boy Advance when it came out. Was it in early 2000s? Yeah, I've got fond memories of picking the game up on launch day from W.H. Smith's when they still sold video games.
Yeah, do you remember when Woolworths? Yeah, it was about the same time, wasn't it?
Oh,
Woolworths
remember
used
when
to sell them
Woolworths?
as well.
Yeah, in fact, that brings back something. I think I remember just going around, just having a scope out of Game and Woolworths, and
Yeah.
I think W.H. Smiths were offering the best deal at the time.
Wow.
So I think if you bought it with a couple of games, they'd give you a certain amount of money off. So I think I must have picked up Super Mario Advance, F-Zero Advance. F-Zero Advance?
The first
Maximum
F-Zero
Velocity,
game,
that's
Maximum
it.
Velocity was the first one, yes. Yeah.
And Kururin.
One of my favourite puzzle games, especially for the GBA. Brilliant game.
Really underrated game, that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they'd throw in a voucher booklet as well in case you were going to pick up any other games and accessories. Like, so the other launch titles, such as that port of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 on the GBA.
That one passed me by, unfortunately. Have you heard good things about that, Sam?
Yeah, that was an interesting one because it was, I think, done in, was it 2D isometric perspective? Yeah. So I think that was probably the only way you could realistically do it, and probably the right way as well, of translating a game that originated on the PlayStation and then you obviously porting it across to GBA, which had two main face buttons and then two shoulder buttons. So I thought that was quite ingenious at the time. But it just shows that the GBA got a variety of software right out of the gate.
And right out of the gate is that Super Mario Advance is, well, I was going to say a port of Super Mario Bros. 2, but it wasn't really a port. It more kind of followed the kind of All-Stars from the SNES model, didn't it, Sam?
Yeah, so this would be the second time that it had been remade, in a sense, because of course you had the All-Stars version, which came out on the SNES. But I guess it's a more focused port in a way, because with All Stars, it probably took the new graphical style and implemented it throughout all three of the main games, or four, including the two main Mario Bros games and Lost Levels. But this was more focused, solely on Super Mario Bros 2. So they put in lots of nice, interesting touches. Like I believe, as you mentioned previously, there was the intro. The
introduction was fantastic.
Yeah.
With the shadows, the characters were in shadow on the left-hand side of the screen. Then they come out and they're all, the four of them, because you've got four different characters, and then maybe you can elaborate on that. And then they pull up the turnips, don't they, on the intro screen. Really, really vivid colours and beautiful.
Yeah, I think it just showed the capabilities of the Game Boy Advance, over the Game Boy Color. It was really, really amazing at the time. Going from that was, I guess, a 8-bit system to, well, I wouldn't really quite say it's between 16 and 32, but I wouldn't call it. It's more akin to the power of a SNES.
Yes.
But with that ARM architecture of the CPU, it could do some really incredible things. But yeah, Super Mario Advance, though, it's an interesting one because you got the four characters.
Yeah.
Obviously, that owes to it being a reskin of Doki Doki Panic. I think they took the definition of what a remake can be to new levels with Super Mario Advance.
You obviously played the first game, NES version of Super Mario Bros. 2. So what really changed throughout to make it a more, like you say, a well thought of port?
I think it was mostly just how they made like several improvements, just going straight into the game, from the menu system and everything. It just it seemed to make more sense on a handheld now. Again, it's a good demonstration of power, but the graphics, they were really good for the time, and I think everything just stood out more because it's a game where you're interacting with the environment a lot, and you're picking up mushrooms, and picking up bombs and breaking down walls and things.
Picking up enemies as well.
Yeah, so I seem to remember you jump up on the back of a Shy Guy.
Yeah.
And pick them up, throw them, and then if you got a good combo going, you could...
That's something this game did add, didn't it? Originally, there were no combos in the NES. I don't think there were combos in the SNES version as well, but in the GBA version...
I think they worked them in.
Yes, they worked them in, yes. They added them in addition. That's cool.
Yeah, and from a character perspective, it's got lots of interesting characters. Obviously, I mentioned the Shy Guy, who in that game was kind of like walking along on all fours and then became a character who would stand upright in the later games, if I'm remembering that correctly. But the first time you see Shy Guy, or something that resembles a Shy Guy, kind of walking around on the ground.
Yeah, is he on all fours? He possibly could be.
I believe so. Well, there might be different versions, because I know there's lots of strange characters in Super Mario. And I think, again, owing to it being a reskin, but I think what they did kind of made sense in context. Wow, it's a bit of a strange one, isn't it, when you think of all the characters that are in it? But there's lots of infamous enemies in it. So obviously, got to mention the most obvious is obviously you've got Wart.
Yeah, the protagonist, isn't he? He's the big bad guy.
It's brilliant. I think it's a great shame that we haven't seen Wart in any. I don't think we've seen him in any game since. Should definitely bring back Wart. He's a fantastic character. Just have a bit of a change from Bowser here and there.
So there were a couple of other enemies which changed between the remaster, I'll call this now. So when it came over to the Game Boy Advance, they introduced things like a robotic Birdo as well. Birdo's another strange character. Yeah,
because with Birdo, I seem to remember in the original game, it was just like the same encounter that you have
every time, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah, and then having the robotic Birdo, that's quite an interesting spin on things. I thought mechanically the Birdo fight worked quite well. The way first time you're there, you see Birdo, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, there's like loads of egg projectiles being shown you, and you're not sure what to do, and then you jump and you'd land on one, and then you can pick up the egg in mid-flight and then chuck it back at Birdo. It was a really interesting boss battle. Not seen anything like that before.
Now, that boss battle was the end of World 3, which replaced Mauser. Because Mauser, once again, it's very similar to the boss battles of Birdo you saw before. Mauser would repeat as well, wouldn't he, as you went through the game. So I suppose they did this robotic Birdo to shake things up a bit and add a little bit of variety to the end of one level at least.
Yeah, I think it was a good way of changing things up for this remake. Yeah, making it more of a new experience for maybe players who had played it before, and for people who hadn't, maybe this is their first time playing the game. And I can only imagine, what they must have been thinking the first time playing, Super Mario Bros. 2 on a GBA. Because it's just a really, really well-made game. It's a decent launch title. Yeah, not only that, it had quite a range of themes for the stages. You had lots of little hidden areas where you pull up an item and then it turned into a door.
Ah, yes, and you go into like the dark world.
Yeah, that's it. I thought that was it's nice. It kept things interesting.
And what about the audio? What do you think of the audio in game?
I think the audio is really good. I think, as with the case with a lot of Game Boy hardware, I think, unless I'm misremembering this, it still had a mono speaker.
Yes, that could be true.
Or maybe it was the first one to have stereo. I'm trying to think now. Either way, whichever way you play, if you play on a any Game Boy, if it was mono, whenever you put headphones in, you get stereo.
You get the stereo.
And there was all those really good stereo separation. Because it's something I remember from earlier consoles as well. Probably the most memorable example is Sonic on the Mega Drive. If you ever played Sonic on the Mega Drive, and you're either playing on headphones or a speaker system, each ring you get alternates between left and right speaker. So it'll go left, right, left. So you've always got that degree of stereo separation. And I thought there was some good examples of that in Super Mario Advance, just with the sound effects. And yeah, it's just really, really well made, and it was great fun to play. I don't ever remember not wanting to see it through to the end.
Did you finish it?
Yes, I did. That was the first time I can remember properly finishing Super Mario Bros. 2. So yeah, that was quite memorable.
Graphically, they've expanded the sprites, so the sprites are larger than they were on the original NES version. Did that lend, were the sprites too big for the screen, is the kind of question I'm asking. Did it lend, when I remember going back to the Game Boy Color and playing Super Mario Brothers Deluxe, there was this weird disjunction where the even on World 1-1 you couldn't see the top of the one of the question mark blocks in the beginning, for example, and as you jumped up the screen would scroll up, which kind of broke the game for me, to be honest. I was wondering if that kind of thing happens in Super Mario Bros. 2 Game Boy Advance version.
No, I think quite cleverly with Super Mario Advance, with the GBA hardware, I believe it was the first Game Boy that to be presented as kind of like widescreen format almost. So I think they've taken all that into consideration. So what you're getting is pretty much everything you'd see on the other versions, but in the right pixel aspect ratio and everything. Yeah. Whereas I think Super Mario Bros. Deluxe on the Game Boy Color, that was definitely something of a compromise, because it added a huge amount of content, which was amazing for the time. But yeah, I think you're right there, and that aspect ratio really, the way they kind of felt almost zoomed in. Yeah, that would have made platforming quite challenging, I think, at the time.
Yeah, and Goombas just appeared out of nowhere as well, because it really was zoomed in, and if you got up ahead of steam, it'd be difficult to know what was ahead of you as well.
Yeah, no, I think they were very sensible with Super Mario Advance. I think they looked at what the hardware could do, because I think if they tried to go maybe any further than that at the start of the GBA's life cycle, for anything a bit more too ambitious, it probably would have been more of a compromise. But they thought that, right, what can we actually get out for launch? Maybe a game that people haven't seen for a while, because I noticed Nintendo do that a lot. They do like to recycle their games in interesting ways, but I think they will look at what game maybe hasn't been in the spotlight for a while, or people might think, oh, hang on, I haven't played that before. So I think it was a clever choice to start with Super Mario Advance on development, and then move on to the other games later in the system's life cycle. Because probably out of all of them, I think Super Mario Advance is probably the most memorable, because it was the first one on the system, and it was the first one to introduce the multiplayer version of Mario Bros. Also on the cartridge.
Yes, that was on the cartridge
arcade
as well.
game.
Yes, I completely forgot about that. Yes, yeah.
That's a really great port. Not just because of the multiplayer, which is fun in itself, but even in single player, it's great to just run through and see how far you can get. So I'm trying to think if there's actually an end to it. I can't actually recall there being an end to. There might be, but I don't know if there is. I've never far seen enough. It. No, I think that's probably another potential game which Nintendo could take and throw into for their bringing it up to date for Nintendo Switch Online,
like a Super Mario Brothers 35 type thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's been a while. It probably would have been since then that they'd actually done anything significant with Mario Bros. Arcade, apart from the very good arcade port which was done by Hamster. That was good.
Never played that one. Did it appear in the NES remix?
That's a good point. If it did, I don't remember it very well. But I think, Mario Bros, the arcade game, there's still a few more things they could do with that.
What they did do with Super Mario, so if you're wondering, how can I haven't got a Game Boy, how can I get my hands on Super Mario Advance? Well, if you have a Wii U, it is on the Virtual Console there. It came out in 2014, so there's an additional way to play this game if you don't have the original hardware.
Yeah, that's quite a good shout, actually. The Virtual Console version is pretty solid. I mean, obviously with emulation it's a lot different for every console, and I think GBA games fared pretty well on the Wii U Virtual Console.
They did. This isn't one I picked up, but I've picked up games like Advance Wars and all those other GBA games, on Minish Cap as well. And yeah, they run well. They look really bright and vibrant on the Wii U screen as well. Very good for handheld mode.
Yeah, no, I think they were really good ports for the GBA games. Obviously, N64 games, they kind of suffered from looking quite dark on the Wii U gamepad and on the TV screen, which is a bit of a shame. But GBA games, I thought, what was it? Yeah, Nintendo European Research and Development, who I believe worked on that, did a really good job on those GBA Virtual Console titles. That is definitely worth picking up, especially if you want to play it on the big screen as well. It's just a bit of a shame, with the Wii U being how it is. You've got the Switch now. I dare say there's a lot of people who prefer to play a lot of those games on the Switch.
It would look good on the Switch screen as well.
It would. I think that's something Nintendo might leverage in the future. But in the meantime, if you've got a Wii U and you really, really want to play this game, but you don't want to, maybe buy a GBA or an original cartridge, if you don't own one already, the Wii U version is very solid. And of course you get the addition of save states as well.
Oh yes.
I would probably recommend for a game like that. But it's perfectly playable. I wouldn't say it gets too difficult. It's just kind of figuring out the mechanics. Once you figure out the mechanics of the game, it's not too bad. There's a moderate challenge to it, mostly with picking up and throwing the projectiles, so with the boss battles and whatnot. But once you've figured out all the patterns, it's just a very, very enjoyable game to play.
That's cool, Sam. We've had a wonderful little chat here about Super Mario Advance. That's a remaster, basically, of Super Mario Brothers 2 and kind of nearly the All-Stars version, but with little bits and pieces thrown in addition. Thank you for joining us for this 50th episode of our podcast, Sam.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Always great to talk about Mario.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give us a like if you've enjoyed our content. You can also check out our other great content on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the N-E Café podcast from all good podcast providers. Just follow the links in the description below.